Hey guys, welcome to the Weekly Talkthrough. We are back with Katie and Evan from the Daily Walkthrough, covering the most important news in gaming and esports this week. Starting things off, after 11 months, it would have been almost a year as of October 21st, the biggest voice actors union called it quits on its strike after they finally came to a suitable agreement for the actors and the major companies that they were boycotting, including places like EA and Take-Two Interactive. One of the big points was allowing kind of an extra bonus for the voice actors in terms of sales. Their main argument, the voice actors, being that they're not paid enough, and of course the company's pushing back against that profit-wise. But it's finally come to an end, so everything is getting back to normal. Evan, what do you think?
I think it's definitely good that, excuse my voice too, I'm a little sick, but I think it's great actually that it's finally reached the point where they can come to an agreement. Studios, whether you're in entertainment or gaming or whatever, honestly, you have to keep your talent happy because at the end of the day, your talent is really what is going to be, creating such an awesome experience, especially in games. I know I find myself latching on to games with really great, content that has to do with voice acting or storyboard writing or, whatever the component actually is. So it's awesome to see that, protesting and going on strike, these voice actors were actually able to do something about it.
Well, I'm glad to see that there was a give and take on both sides, right? I'm glad to see that it was a compromise was found, because I think that's important for both sides to be able to give and take a little bit. But I do think you're totally right. When it comes to something like voice acting, it's so easy to immerse yourself in that character and the voice associated with that character. Think of, Master Chief or any of the Overwatch voice actors and actresses. They all do such a phenomenal job, and you get kind of like almost an attachment to that voice. But I think, Evan, you don't ever see the person behind the voice, so sometimes I think it's easy for people to presume that they don't work quite as hard because it's not like they're in front of the screen, but that's not true. And I'm glad to see that their status is being recognized for what it is, for their talents and their skills.
Yeah, not to mention too, once people find out who that person actually is behind the voice, there's plenty of videos of voice actors and actresses going to panels and having fun with audiences that love them because of what they do. And I think it took a while for gaming companies to finally realize that they need to make sure that their talent is properly paid and happy. Because that's what all around makes a better game. Moving on though, we have another issue with the public in regards to gaming culture.
I love this story.
We've been taking digs all our lives as gamers, but this time it hurts a little bit. In the news recently, Charles Randall, who is a designer and programmer for companies like Ubisoft and BioWare, reached out on a form of his social media with a long rant talking about how game designers want to be more candid with their audiences in regards to letting them know how it's going, what struggles they're encountering, etc., if, and quote, gamers were not so toxic. Now, we know toxicity is definitely an issue.
Man, that froze on like the most attractive Evan face I think I've ever seen.
So we as gamers have been featured in the news again today. A programmer who has worked for companies such as Ubisoft and BioWare, Mr. Charles Randall, had a rant of his that he posted on one of his social media mediums across the internet. It went viral on Twitter, basically saying that he had a conversation with someone who, was speaking to him as a designer and said, I really wish that game devs and designers were more candid about, the process behind what goes into a game, struggles, pitfalls, whatever, successes. And he was a little bit annoyed, I might even say, in his response, in saying that, truly game devs and programmers really do want to be candid and they try to, but they realize that because, quote, gamers are so toxic, it's actually really hard for them to do that.
I see.
I know, right? And, we've been taking, digs all our lives, but this one kind of hurts a little bit because we know that, obviously toxicity is a big problem in gaming. Everybody knows one person that rages a lot whenever they're winning or losing or whatever. He even said, we love to talk about development, the challenges we face, the problems we solve, the shortcuts we take, but it's almost never worth it, which is kind of alarming to hear because, you really do want to hear devs and programmers feel as if they're welcome to speak with their audiences, right? Because they're trying to make these games. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it does have an air of truth to it. I think also in part simply because it is easier to be mean on the internet. You don't have to look at a person. You don't have to face them when you're frustrated, when you're angry, when you want a game to come out, you don't get the news you want. You're playing Overwatch and you're pissed off because you're losing or what have you. It's easy to just be nasty because there's no repercussions. You can get up from your desk, leave your laptop, leave your computer, and it's done. And I do totally agree that there must probably be this shield that they want to put up around themselves because there's always going to be that small segment of people who scream the loudest and say the meanest things. I mean, look at the very end of what he said. He goes, quote, I know doing so being meaning more candid, quote, would lead to another wave of assholes throwing shit at me. Yeah. I mean, clearly, if you're that aggressive in your opinion about something, it's been formed for a reason.
Yep.
And I mean, I definitely think it's a two-way street, but I understand why developers would be hesitant to try and start a rapport when they know there's going to be a segment of people who just love to hate.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a problem for sure. It hurts though. It really does, just because, as a person who loves experiencing new games and, me personally, I actually am very interested in that process. I'm not a dev or a designer myself, but, I would love to, see into what actually is going behind all of the games that we know and love. I think one of the most powerful things that he caps off the interview with is how he was talking about a kid that came up to him after a public talk. And he says, quote, I shit you not, this kid, somewhere between 13 and 16, I'd guess, starts talking to me about how bad devs are because of a YouTuber that he watches. He nailed all the points. Bad engines, being greedy, you name it. I was appalled. And that's someone, super young. That's really the primary, targeting audience, that ranging up to however old. That's got to suck as a dev, for sure.
Well, yeah, and of course, I mean, there's the misunderstanding, and I understand why they need to protect themselves, but I think I appreciate that he said that. I think a dialogue definitely needs to be there. Yeah. Whether anything will come from it, we'll have to see. But capping off kind of a dramatic week, especially for gaming companies, there's been a little bit of a tiff between Bluehole, which created PUBG, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and Epic Games, which created the Unreal 4 engine that PUBG was created in, that Brendan Green and co. used to create the now massively, massively successful game. So if you'll recall, Epic Games has come out with a new game called Fortnite. Fortnite has a battle royale mode that is free to play, and it is essentially a PUBG-style free-for-all game concept. Well, PUBG is not too thrilled about this development, saying in, quote, stated in a press release that it's considering, quote, further action. And Bluehole's Chang-Han Kim said, quote, after listening to the growing feedback from our community, we're concerned that Fortnite may be replicating the experience for which PUBG is known. Essentially, PUBG is concerned because they pay Epic Games royalties based on the Unreal 4 engine and the success of PUBG. And now the people that they pay royalties to, whose engine they use to create their game, has created a game very similar to theirs and maybe taking inspiration, if you will, Evan, from the things PUBG is implementing. And that has Brendan Green and Bluehole kind of concerned.
it's definitely something to be concerned about. I mean, that's a really hairy situation, one way or another.
Well, it's awkward, right?
Yeah, all of these weird, legal loopholes and frameworks, and however you establish your contractual agreements with your publishers, with your engine developers, it's really, really complicated. And I'm sure that, Brendan and his team have spent a fortune on making sure that everything proprietary to PUBG is staying that way. And considering that they're locked in this little battle with the Unreal guys is actually somewhat concerning, just because that engine is so massively and widely used across so many games of all different formats, and obviously the second part being how huge PUBG is. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to understand just how many viewers streamers can get on Twitch, or how many amazing matches get put onto YouTube and all of that.
Well, and PUBG did clarify that this wasn't about the battle royale mode itself. They had no illusions that people weren't going to copy this concept. They're concerned about the conflict of interests that may be happening there.
Right.
And you got to wonder, are other people, other developers going to perhaps look at this and say, I'm hesitant now to use this engine because there might be this double-edged sword based on my success. Right. I mean, clearly it's a convoluted issue, and it seems like PUBG came out swinging hot, talking about further action, and then kind of cooled and said, hey, this isn't that intense. We're just angry about a couple things. I'm interested to see how it'll play out, what Epic Games has to say about it, and if they can find kind of that happy medium for both of their games now.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think we're going to have to call it. Evan looks like he's about to kill over and die, and we would hate to lose him.
I'll be better next week, I promise.
We're going to call it a night, guys, but thank you again. This is the Daily Walkthrough's weekly talk through of your most important news in gaming and esports. Stay tuned for next week. We will see you then.